Marcus Thompson had everything money could buy. A penthouse overlooking the city's skyline, a tech empire worth $3 billion, and enough luxury cars to fill a small parking lot. But at 42 years old, Marcus ate dinner alone every night, worked until midnight in empty offices, and couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him how his day was and genuinely cared about the answer. Success, he had learned, could be the loneliest achievement of all. The only person who entered his sterile, marble-floored world regularly was Carmen Rodriguez, the quiet woman who cleaned his penthouse 3 times a week. Carmen was 34, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. She arrived every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 6 p.m., after Marcus had supposedly left for evening meetings or dinner appointments. She moved through his 20-room penthouse like a ghost, leaving everything spotless and perfectly arranged, never disturbing his papers or personal items. Marcus barely noticed her for the first 6 months. She was simply part of the building's service, as invisible as the doorman or the elevator operator. But Carmen was far from invisible to the 8-year-old boy waiting for her at home. Diego Rodriguez was the light of Carmen's world, a bright, curious child who did his homework at their neighbor Mrs. Patterson's kitchen table every evening, while Carmen worked her 3 jobs. Diego had never met his father, and every night he asked Carmen when she would find him a daddy like his classmates had.
Carmen's day started at 5 a.m. at a hotel downtown, where she cleaned rooms until noon. Then she rushed across town to her afternoon job at an office building, vacuuming carpets and emptying trash cans until 5 p.m. Finally, she took 2 buses to reach Marcus's building, where she earned the most money of her 3 jobs, $50 for 3 hours of work 3 times a week. It was barely enough. After rent, utilities, groceries, and Diego's school expenses, Carmen had maybe $20 left each month. She sent what she could to her elderly mother in Bogotá, who was raising Carmen's younger sister's 3 children after the sister died in a car accident. Carmen had been in America for 9 years, and every day was a careful balance between survival and hope. She dreamed of getting her GED, maybe learning computer skills, finding a better job, but dreams required time and money, and Carmen had neither. What she had was love for her son, and an unshakable belief that hard work would eventually pay off. That belief was tested on a cold Thursday evening in October when Carmen received the call that changed everything. She was cleaning Marcus's master bathroom when her phone rang. It was her landlord, Mr. Kowalski, and his voice was not friendly. "Carmen, you're 3 months behind on rent. I've been patient, but I need the money. You have 2 weeks to pay the full amount or you and your boy need to find somewhere else to live." Carmen's hands started shaking. 3 months behind meant $1,800. She might as well have been asked for $18,000. "Please, Mr. Kowalski, I can give you $600 next week and then 2 weeks, Carmen. I'm sorry, but I have bills too." Carmen sank onto Marcus's bathroom floor, still holding her phone, and began to cry. She called her sister Maria in Los Angeles, the only family she had in America. "Maria, I don't know what to do. If I lose the apartment, where will Diego and I go? I can't put him in a shelter. He's doing so well in school, he has friends, he's happy." Maria's voice was gentle but helpless. "Carmen, you know I would help if I could, but Carlos is still out of work, and we're barely making our own rent." Carmen knew this. She wasn't calling for money. She was calling because she needed to say the words out loud to someone who loved her. "I feel like I'm failing him, Maria. He deserves so much better than this constant worry, this uncertainty. Yesterday he asked me if we could get a Christmas tree this year, and I didn't know what to say." They talked for 20 minutes, both of them crying, both of them wishing things were different. Carmen hung up and finished cleaning the bathroom, wiping away her tears along with the soap residue on Marcus's marble countertops. She had no idea that Marcus had come home early from his dinner meeting and was standing in his home office listening to every word of her heartbroken phone conversation. Marcus stood frozen in his doorway. He had never heard Carmen speak before tonight, except for the occasional, "Good evening, Mr. Thompson," when their paths crossed. Her voice was soft and musical, even through tears. But it wasn't her voice that stopped him cold. It was her words. 3 months behind on rent, a son named Diego, the possibility of homelessness, the careful dignity with which she discussed her desperate situation. Marcus walked quietly to his living room window and stared out at the city lights. $1,800. To Marcus, $1,800 was what he spent on a single dinner at his favorite restaurant. It was less than what his housekeeper spent on flowers for his penthouse each month. It was nothing. But to Carmen,
It was everything. The difference between having a home and sleeping in her car with her 8-year-old son. Marcus had built his fortune by identifying problems and creating solutions. This was a problem, a solvable problem. But something held him back from simply writing a check. He had learned through years of disappointment that money could complicate relationships. It could turn friendship into obligation, gratitude into resentment. If he directly gave Carmen the money, would she quit? Would she feel uncomfortable working for someone who knew her financial situation? Would it change the quiet professional relationship they had maintained? More than that, Marcus realized he wanted to understand this woman who worked so hard, who loved her son so deeply, who faced potential homelessness with such grace and dignity. He wanted to know about Diego, about her family in Colombia, about her dreams beyond survival. That night, Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives. He wouldn't give Carmen money directly. He would find another way. The next morning, Marcus asked his assistant to research Carmen's landlord. Mr. Kowalski owned a small apartment building in Queens and was, according to public records, struggling with his own mortgage payments. Marcus called him directly. "Mr. Kowalski, this is Marcus Thompson. I understand you have a tenant named Carmen Rodriguez who's behind on rent." Mr. Kowalski's voice was wary. "Who's asking?" "Someone who wants to help. Anonymously. I'd like to pay her back rent and 6 months forward, but she can never know it came from me." He restarted.
Mr. Kowalski was silent for a long moment.
"You want to pay a stranger's rent? Why?"
Marcus chose his words carefully. "Sometimes people work hard and still struggle through no fault of their own. Carmen works 3 jobs. She deserves a break." There was another pause. "What do you want me to tell her?" "Tell her there was a clerical error, that she'd been overpaying for months and this is a refund of the excess plus a credit toward future rent." Marcus transferred the money that afternoon. $2,000 to cover Carmen's debt and give her some breathing room. When Carmen received the call from Mr. Kowalski the next day, she couldn't understand what he was saying. "A clerical error? But I know exactly how much I've paid." "Carmen, sometimes these things happen. The important thing is you're all caught up, and you've got credit for the next 6 months. Don't question good luck." Carmen hung up the phone and immediately called Maria. "Something impossible just happened," she whispered. "My landlord says I've been overpaying rent for months. He's giving me $1,800 back, and I don't owe rent until next spring." Maria was skeptical. "Carmen, that doesn't sound right. Landlords don't make mistakes like that." "I know it sounds crazy, but he showed me the paperwork. He said sometimes their accounting gets mixed up." Carmen felt like she could breathe for the first time in months. She took Diego out for pizza that night, their first restaurant meal in over a year. "Mommy, why are you so happy?" Diego asked, sauce on his chin and joy in his eyes. "Sometimes, mijo, miracles happen when we need them most." That Thursday, when Carmen arrived at Marcus's penthouse, she was humming softly while she worked. Marcus, who had been working late more often lately, watched her from his office doorway. The transformation was remarkable. The weight she had been carrying was gone from her shoulders. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself staying home more often, timing his work so he'd be there when Carmen arrived. He began leaving small things for her to discover. A box of expensive tea bags in the kitchen with a note saying, "Left by previous tenant." A warm coat in the closet that was too small for him, but would fit Carmen perfectly. Each gift was accompanied by a plausible excuse, and Carmen accepted them gratefully, but without suspicion. The real breakthrough came when Marcus learned about Diego's school situation. Carmen was on another phone call, this time with Diego's teacher. "Mrs. Rodriguez, Diego is such a bright boy, but he's fallen behind in math. He needs tutoring, but I know the after-school program costs money." Carmen's voice was strained. "How much is the program?" "It's $60 a month, but don't worry if you can't afford it right now. We can work something out." After Carmen hung up, Marcus heard her sigh deeply. He could imagine her doing the math in her head, trying to figure out where $60 could come from in a budget that was already stretched impossibly thin. The next day, Marcus called Jefferson Elementary School and spoke with the principal. "I'd like to make an anonymous donation to sponsor your after-school tutoring program, enough to cover any student who needs it but can't afford it." The principal was delighted. "Mr. Thompson, that's incredibly generous. May I ask what prompted this donation?" "Sometimes children just need a chance to succeed. Consider it an investment in their futures." When Diego came home from school that week, he was bursting with excitement. "Mommy, guess what? My teacher says I got selected for free tutoring. They picked me because of my potential." Carmen hugged her son tightly, once again marveling at their sudden streak of good fortune. She had no idea that Marcus was watching from his window as she and Diego played in the small courtyard below his building, Diego showing her his improved math homework. As winter approached, Marcus's anonymous interventions became more frequent and more personal. When he overheard Carmen mention that Diego needed new shoes, but she was waiting until payday, Marcus accidentally left a bag of designer sneakers in Diego's size outside the building's lost and found, with a note from building management about unclaimed items being donated. When Carmen caught a cold and missed 3 days of work, losing crucial income, Marcus had his assistant send her family a grocery delivery, with a note saying she'd won a random drawing. Each act of kindness was carefully orchestrated to seem like coincidence or luck. But Marcus was learning as much about Carmen's character as she was receiving help. He discovered that she always shared her good fortune with others. When she received the grocery delivery, she invited elderly Mrs. Patterson over for dinner. When Diego got new shoes, Carmen donated his old ones to the school's clothing drive, even though they were barely worn. Marcus began to realize that Carmen's generosity in the face of her own struggles was unlike anything he'd encountered in his business world, where success was hoarded and kindness was often strategic. The turning point in their relationship came on a snowy December evening. Marcus had been reading in his study when he heard Carmen's voice from the living room. But this time, she wasn't on the phone. She was talking to Diego, who had apparently come upstairs with Mrs. Patterson to wait for his mother to finish work.
Mommy, this place is like a castle, Diego was saying, his voice filled with 8-year-old wonder.
The man who lives here must be like a king.
Carmen's voice was gentle.
He's just a person, mijo, like us. He works hard for what he has.
Do you think he's lonely, living in such a big place by himself?
Diego asked. The question hit Marcus like a physical blow, from the mouths of babes. Carmen was quiet for a moment.
Maybe he is, Diego. Maybe that's why it's important for us to always be kind to people, even if we don't know their stories.
Marcus made a decision in that moment. He walked out of his study and into the living room, where Carmen was dusting his bookshelves while Diego sat at the coffee table, carefully doing homework. "Good evening," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle them. Carmen immediately looked flustered. "Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry. Diego was supposed to wait downstairs, but Mrs. Patterson had to step out and I thought..." "It's perfectly fine," Marcus interrupted, smiling at Diego. "You must be Diego. I'm Marcus." Diego looked up from his math worksheet with bright, curious eyes. "Are you the king of this castle?" Marcus laughed. The first genuine laugh he'd had in months. "Not a king, just a guy who likes books and has too much space for one person." He gestured to Diego's homework. "Math, huh? That's my favorite subject." Diego's face lit up. "Really? I'm getting better at it because of tutoring at school. My teacher says I have potential." "I bet you do. Mind if I take a look?" Marcus sat down across from Diego, and for the next hour, he helped the boy with his homework while Carmen worked quietly around them. Diego was indeed bright, asking thoughtful questions and grasping concepts quickly. More than that, he was charming, funny, and desperately hungry for male attention and approval. When Carmen finished her work, she found Diego explaining to Marcus how he wanted to be an astronaut when he grew up. "The moon is so far away, but I think humans can figure out how to get there faster someday. Maybe I'll invent a new kind of rocket." Marcus was enchanted. "I think you might be right, Diego. Innovation starts with imagination." As they prepared to leave, Diego turned to Marcus with the devastating honesty of childhood. "Mr. Marcus, do you ever get lonely in this big place?" Marcus glanced at Carmen, who was looking embarrassed by her son's directness. "Sometimes I do, Diego. Maybe you could come eat dinner with us sometime. Mommy makes really good rice and beans." The invitation hung in the air like a bridge between two worlds. Carmen looked mortified. "Diego, Mr. Thompson is very busy. He probably has important dinner meetings and..." "Actually," Marcus said quietly, "I can't remember the last time someone invited me to dinner just to be kind. I would be honored if you're sure it's not too much trouble." Carmen stared at him, searching his face for signs of politeness or pity. What she saw instead was genuine longing, the same expression Diego wore when he watched families at the park. We don't have much," she said softly. "Our apartment is small and the food is simple. Carmen, I've eaten in the world's finest restaurants, and I can't tell you the last time I enjoyed a meal. It would be a privilege." That Saturday, Marcus Thompson, billionaire CEO, knocked on the door of a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, holding a bottle of wine and feeling more nervous than he had before his first board meeting. Diego answered the door wearing his best shirt and a huge grin. "Mr. Marcus, Mommy made extra rice because she said you're really tall and probably eat a lot." The apartment was tiny compared to Marcus's penthouse, but it was filled with something his home had never contained: life. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, family photos lined the walls, and the smell of home-cooked food filled every corner. Carmen had clearly spent hours preparing, and she looked beautiful in a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her nervous smile genuine and warm. "Welcome to our home," she said, and Marcus realized no one had ever spoken those words to him before. Not welcome to a house or a property, but welcome to a home. Dinner was rice and beans with chicken, simple food prepared with care and served with love. Diego dominated the conversation, telling Marcus about school, his friends, his dreams, and asking a million questions about Marcus's work, his travels, and whether he'd ever met any real astronauts.
As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. There was no agenda here, no one trying to impress him or get something from him. Carmen and Diego simply wanted his company, and he realized how starved he had been for genuine human connection. After dinner, Diego insisted on showing Marcus his room, which he shared with his mother. The space was cramped but organized, with Diego's bed on one side and Carmen's on the other. Separated by a curtain Diego had decorated with drawings of rockets and planets.
"This is where I do my homework.
Diego said, pointing to a small desk by the window.
And this is my treasure box."
He opened a shoebox filled with his most precious possessions: a baseball card, a few coins, a picture of him and Carmen at a park, and a certificate from school recognizing his improvement in math. Marcus was moved by the pride Diego took in his simple treasures and the obvious love that filled this small space. When it was time to leave, Diego hugged Marcus goodbye with the unself-conscious affection of a child who had decided he liked someone.
"Can you come back next week?" he asked. "Maybe you could help me with my science project." Marcus looked at Carmen, who nodded shyly.
"I think Mr. Marcus might be too busy, mijo."
"I'm never too busy for friends," Marcus said. And he meant it. Walking back to his penthouse that night, Marcus reflected on the evening. He had spent 3 hours in a 600-square-foot apartment and felt more at home than he ever had in his 4,000-square-foot penthouse. Carmen's quiet grace, Diego's boundless enthusiasm, the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with people who cared about each other, it was everything his successful but empty life had been missing. Over the next few weeks, Marcus became a regular visitor to their small apartment. He helped Diego with homework, played board games, and listened to Carmen's stories about growing up in Colombia. In return, he shared parts of himself he had kept buried under years of business armor.
Carmen began to open up about her dreams and fears. She talked about wanting to finish her education, about hoping Diego would have opportunities she never had, about missing her mother in Colombia, but knowing she couldn't provide for Diego there. Marcus listened without offering solutions, understanding instinctively that Carmen needed someone to hear her, not fix her problems. But privately, Marcus continued his anonymous assistance. When Carmen mentioned that Diego was interested in computers, but the school's lab was outdated, Marcus donated new equipment to Jefferson Elementary. When she worried about Christmas presents, Marcus arranged for Diego to win a holiday raffle that provided gifts for the whole family. When Carmen caught the flu and missed work, Marcus made sure her bills were mysteriously covered by emergency assistance programs she had supposedly qualified for. Each intervention was carefully crafted to preserve Carmen's dignity while addressing her needs. But as winter turned to spring, Marcus realized his feelings for Carmen were deepening beyond friendship and admiration. She was intelligent, kind, resilient, and beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with money or status. Diego had become like a son to him, and Carmen was becoming something he had never expected to find. The problem was that the relationship was built on a foundation of secrets. Carmen had no idea that Marcus was her anonymous benefactor, that every stroke of good luck she had experienced in the past 6 months had come from him. How could he tell her he loved her without revealing that he had been manipulating her circumstances, even with the best intentions? The crisis came on a warm May evening, when Carmen was cleaning Marcus's office while he worked nearby. His computer screen displayed a spreadsheet of his charitable donations, including a line item that read, "Rodriguez Family Assistance, $12,000. Carmen glanced at the screen while emptying his trash can, and Marcus watched her face change as she read the words.
Carmen stared at the computer screen, reading the line over and over. "Rodriguez Family Assistance, $12,000. The number felt surreal, impossible. She looked at Marcus, who had gone completely still at his desk. "Marcus," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, "what is this?" Marcus closed his laptop slowly, his heart pounding. This wasn't how he had planned to tell her. He had imagined a romantic dinner, a careful explanation, a moment when their relationship was strong enough to weather the revelation. Instead, she had discovered his secret by accident, and he could see the confusion and hurt building in her eyes. "Carmen, I can explain." $12,000, she repeated, sinking into the chair across from his desk. The rent mistake, Diego's tutoring, the groceries, the shoes, all of it. It was you. Marcus nodded, unable to find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. Carmen put her face in her hands. "Oh God, I feel so stupid. I actually believed we were just lucky, that good things were finally happening to us." "Carmen, please, let me explain why." "Why?" She looked up at him, and he could see tears starting to form. "Why did you do this? Was it guilt? Pity? Some kind of social experiment?" The pain in her voice cut Marcus deeper than any business betrayal ever had. "No, Carmen, it was never pity." "Then what? Why would you manipulate our lives like this?" Marcus stood up, desperate to make her understand. "Because I was falling in love with you, and I was terrified that if I helped you directly, it would change everything between us. I wanted to know you as a person, not as someone who felt obligated to me because of money." Carmen was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. "You were falling in love with me," she repeated slowly. "Were. Past tense." "Am," Marcus corrected. "I am in love with you. I love your strength, your kindness, the way you raised Diego to be generous even when you had nothing. I love the way you make every space feel like home." Carmen wiped her eyes, trying to process everything Marcus had said. "You love me," she said quietly, "but you built our entire relationship on lies." "Not lies," Marcus said desperately. "I never lied to you. I helped quietly." "Marcus, do you understand what you've done? For months, I've been proud of how we were managing, how Diego was doing better in school, how things were finally looking up. I thought it was because of my hard work, my choices. But it was all you. You took away my agency, my dignity." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He had never considered that his help might feel like theft to someone as proud as Carmen. "I never meant to take anything from you. I wanted to give you breathing room so you could succeed on your own terms." "But they weren't my own terms, were they? They were your terms. You decided what I needed, when I needed it, how I should receive it. You never asked me what I wanted." Carmen stood up, pacing to the window. "And Diego, God, Diego adores you. He thinks of you as a father figure. What happens now? Do I tell him that his new hero has been manipulating our lives? Do I explain that the man he looks up to sees us as a charity case?" "You're not a charity case," Marcus said firmly. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. You work 3 jobs, you're raising an incredible son, you send money to your family in Colombia. You're not weak or needy. You're remarkable." "Then why didn't you treat me like I was remarkable? Why didn't you respect me enough to be honest?" The question hung between them, and Marcus realized he didn't have a good answer. He had been so focused on not wanting money to complicate their relationship that he had complicated it in a much worse way. "Carmen, I was wrong. I should have been honest from the beginning. But my feelings for you are real. My care for Diego is real. The friendship we've built was built on deception," Carmen finished. Carmen walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. When she spoke again, her voice was calmer but tired. "Marcus, I need you to understand something. I came to this country with nothing. I've worked my entire adult life to build something for Diego and myself. It's not much, but it's ours. We've survived on our own strength, our own choices, our own mistakes and victories." She turned to face him. "When I thought we were having a streak of good luck, I was proud. I felt like maybe the universe was finally rewarding our hard work. But now I know it wasn't the universe. It was you, deciding what we deserved and when we deserved it." Marcus wanted to argue, to explain that his intentions had been good, but he could see the truth in her words. He had taken away her victories and made them his gifts. "What can I do to make this right?" he asked. Carmen smiled sadly. "I don't know if you can. The trust is broken, Marcus. Even if I could forgive the deception, how would I ever know if you're being honest with me? How would I know if Diego's successes are his own, or if you're pulling strings behind the scenes?
I would never interfere again. I would be completely transparent. But you see the problem, don't you? The fact that you have the power to interfere, to fix our problems with a phone call or a check, means we can never be equals. There will always be this imbalance between us. Marcus felt something breaking inside his chest. So, what are you saying? I'm saying I need time to think. I need to figure out how to move forward. Carmen picked up her cleaning supplies. I think it's best if I finish out my contract here and then find other work. Clean slate for both of us. Carmen, please, don't let my mistakes destroy what we have with Diego. He needs stability and honesty, Carmen interrupted. Two things that have been in short supply lately. She headed toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Marcus, I believe that you love us. But love without respect isn't enough, and you didn't respect me enough to tell me the truth. After Carmen left, Marcus sat alone in his penthouse, feeling more isolated than he had before she entered his life. Over the next few days, he replayed their conversation hundreds of times, trying to understand how his good intentions had caused so much pain. He realized that Carmen was right. He had treated her like a problem to be fixed, rather than a person to be respected.
He had made decisions about her life without including her, assuming he knew better what she needed than she did.
The irony wasn't lost on him that, in trying to preserve their relationship, he had nearly destroyed it. Marcus threw himself into work, but everything felt hollow. His assistant noticed his distraction, his business partners commented on his lack of focus, and his housekeeper, Carmen's replacement, moved through his penthouse like an efficient ghost, leaving no trace of warmth or humanity behind. Meanwhile, Carmen was struggling with her own emotions. She was angry, hurt, and confused, but she also couldn't deny that Marcus's help had made a real difference in their lives. Diego was thriving in school. They had financial stability for the first time in years, and she had been able to sleep at night without worrying about eviction or empty refrigerators. More than that, she missed Marcus. She missed their dinners together, the way he listened to Diego's endless chatter about space exploration, the gentleness in his eyes when he looked at her son. She missed the feeling of being part of something bigger than survival, of having someone who cared about their daily struggles and small victories. Diego was heartbroken by Marcus's sudden absence from their lives. Why doesn't Mr. Marcus come to dinner anymore? He asked every few days. Did I do something wrong? Carmen's heart broke each time she had to deflect his questions. How could she explain adult complications to an 8-year-old who had simply loved and been loved in return? 2 weeks after their confrontation, Carmen received an unexpected phone call. It was Dr. Sarah Martinez from Columbia University's continuing education program. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm calling about your application for our scholarship program for working parents.
Carmen was confused.
I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez, but I didn't apply for any scholarship program.
According to our records, you were nominated by someone who was very impressed by your work ethic and potential. The nomination included a detailed essay about your goals and circumstances. Would you be interested in learning more about the program? Carmen felt a familiar knot in her stomach.
Marcus. Even after their confrontation, he was still trying to help her. But as Dr. Martinez explained the program, night classes, childcare provided, full tuition coverage for a business degree, Carmen found herself genuinely interested. Not because of how she had received the information, but because of the opportunity itself. That evening, she called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting for her call. Carmen, Marcus, did you nominate me for a scholarship at Columbia? There was a pause. Yes. But before you hang up, please let me explain. This isn't like before. I didn't pay for anything or pull any strings. I simply wrote a letter recommending you for a program that already existed. The selection committee made their decision based on your qualifications, not my influence.
Carmen was quiet, thinking.
Why? Because you deserve the chance to pursue your dreams. Because you're brilliant and capable, and you should have opportunities that match your abilities. I didn't create this opportunity for you. I just made sure you knew about it.
For the first time in weeks, Carmen felt something other than anger toward Marcus.
If I do this program, it can't be because you're involved. It has to be completely separate from you. I understand. I won't have any connection to the program or the university. This would be entirely yours.
Carmen took a deep breath.
I want to see you. We need to talk, really talk, about everything, but not at your penthouse and not at my apartment. Somewhere neutral. The park where Diego likes to play?
Marcus suggested.
Tomorrow evening, after he's in bed. Mrs. Patterson can watch him. Okay?
Carmen agreed.
Tomorrow evening. We'll figure out if there's a way forward from here.